when intelligent design was first broke on the scene, Mike Behe's great book, Darwin's
Mm-hmm.
Black Box, 1996. And Bill Dembski had a series of just really seminal work, starting with the design inference.
Mm-hmm.
There was a period where we were just kind of on a roll, and we had reframed the issue. It wasn't about the age of the Earth or different interpretations of Genesis. It was design or apparent design, and people liked that framing because that was the big question. It wasn't, for Christians had gotten kind of hung up on arguing with each other about how to interpret the first chapter of Genesis, and we'd, given the atheist side of the argument a free pass, that they only had to argue with the 6,000 year interpretation of or flood geology, when there was much bigger questions in play. And for us, it was, um, is there design or no design, which ends up being a surrogate for materialism versus theism at
Right.
worldview level, unless you want to go with panspermia, which I've argued against in a recent op-ed.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, in any case, then there was the Dover trial in '05, which was
Mm-hmm.
something we didn't want, which we urged the
I remember
school
that.
board not to pursue. And there was a period after that where, the media, it was kind of the mantra was, it's over after Dover. There wasn't as much media attention around intelligent design. And in the end, I think that was a really good thing. And a number of us started to write a second generation of books and scientific articles. We're now closing in on 200 peer-reviewed articles
Wow.
advancing the theory of intelligent design. Um, so after I wrote Signature in the Cell in 2009, I started to get a lot of mail and correspondence, and one particular, this might be illustrative, and I can share a name here. It's I got an email in '09 from a German scientist, Gunther Beckley,
Yeah.
and he asked if I would please
Mm-hmm.
not reply to the email and not call him at the office number that was in his
Okay.
details at the bottom, but to call him at home. And his story was that he had created an exhibit at the Stuttgart Museum of Natural History, the largest natural history museum in Europe, and he was curating that exhibit. It was a bicentennial exhibit celebrating the 200-year anniversary of Darwin's birth and the 150th anniversary of Darwin's publication of The Origin of Species. And he was the public spokesman for Darwinism at this very prestigious natural history museum. One of his colleagues had said, "Hey, Gunther, if you're going to represent us to the media, and you better read the books about intelligent design." And the reason he did that is Gunther had created a scales of justice as part of the display, where on one side was The Origin of Species, and on the other was all the books about intelligent design. You had 5 or 6 ID books on one side and the Origin on the other,
Okay.
and then the caption underneath said, "The one book that outweighs them all." And, Darwin went like this. So he started reading. So he got in touch after he had read a bunch of these ID books,
Interesting.
and he said, "Look, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have read those books, and
Mm.
you guys are being unfairly maligned. There's a lot more science to this than I realized. Can I come out and see you guys?" And so we hosted him in Seattle, and he then embarked on a kind of experience similar to what I had done. We became a Darwin skeptic, and then within a year or two, he was pretty convinced of the evidence for ID.
Mm.
He was not a theist or Christian or anything when this whole process started. He was sort of into process philosophy. And but anyway, long story short, by 2016, he did have a not only an intellectual conversion to ID and to theism, but then to Christianity. He's now a devout Catholic. And at that point, he thought, hey, I need to be open about my scientific change of mind as well. And so, there have been a number, by about 15, 16, there was quite a number of high-profile professors at mainstream science universities or institutes who had one way or another gotten in touch and said, hey, we've been reading your books. We
Wow.
like what you're saying.
Hmm.
And so there's a kind of a new phase in our work where some of those people are now doing some really cutting-edge research using ID, not so much, not making an argument for ID like Behe and Dembski and Doug Axe and I have done, but more using the concept of intelligent design is what scientists call a heuristic, a guide to discovery, using it to make
Yep.
predictions about what they ought to find in living systems or in the physical universe, etc. So I've had a lot of those really interesting behind the scenes conversations
I'm
with people who are
sure.
in process
Mm.
and weighing all this stuff, and finding that the evidence and the arguments that we've made are a lot more powerful than they would have wanted to say in public, even a few years before they first
Mm.
contacted us.